It was an ordinary day in Kissimmee, a quiet Florida town where families went about their daily lives without major changes. However, for Madeline Soto, a 13-year-old girl, that would be the last day of her normal life. In February 2024, Madeline disappeared without a trace. The case began as the disappearance of a young girl, but soon turned into a brutal crime that would shock her entire community and attract national attention. Madeline was a victim of abuse, manipulation, and ultimately, murder. What seemed to be a simple absence of a teenage girl turned out to be a devastating story of pain and suffering, exposing deep flaws in child protection. Throughout the video, we will follow all the events that led to Madeline's disappearance, the unfolding of the investigation, and the discovery that the person responsible for her death was much closer than anyone imagined. The aim of this video is to recount the case of Madeline, from her disappearance to the discovery of her body and the trial of Stephan Sterns, the person responsible for this tragedy. We will explore how justice was served, but also reflect on the importance of ensuring the safety of children. The case raises essential questions about the role of family, community, and authorities in protecting minors, as well as alerting us to the fact that danger can come from where we least expect it. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave your like and enable notifications so that you don't miss videos like this one. Madeline's story is a warning, and understanding the details of this case is fundamental for the prevention and protection of other children. Let's begin to better understand what happened to Madeline and how justice was finally served. Madeline Soto was a 13-year-old teenager who, at first glance, could be mistaken for any other girl her age. She lived in Kissimmee, Florida, a city that blends quiet residential areas with the hustle and bustle of tourists due to its proximity to famous parks and landmarks. Amidst this small-town routine with an American rural feel, Madeline led a seemingly normal life: school, family, friends, and plans for the future. She was described as a shy but sweet girl, the kind who prefers to observe first and speak later. She liked spending time in her room, listening to music, using her cell phone, and keeping up with social media. Like most teenagers, she also had simple hobbies: watching series, drawing, chatting with friends about everyday things, school, crushes, assignments, and exams. Nothing in her routine would suggest anything out of the ordinary. Her relationship with her mother was central to her life. Like many families, they faced challenges, changes, and adjustments. But on the outside, they seemed like just another family trying to get on with life. The mother worked, took care of the house and her daughter, and Madeline had her responsibilities as a student. There was nothing that, to a distant observer, seemed to indicate that this story would end in tragedy. At school, Madeline wasn't the type of student who sought attention. She was more reserved, maintained a small circle of friends, but was well liked by those who knew her. Teachers and classmates saw her as a quiet girl who followed the rules, did her work, and didn't cause problems. She wasn't the most popular in the class, nor did she need to be. Her life revolved around the small things typical of adolescence: tests, assignments, late-night text messages with friends, weekend plans. Kissimmee, in turn, was the perfect setting for this routine. Residential streets, neighborhood schools, parks, small local businesses, a place where residents know each other by name, where neighbors greet each other, and where many parents still feel relatively safe letting their children go to and from school. This atmosphere of apparent normalcy makes Madeline's case even more impactful. Before February 26, 2024, Madeline was just a girl growing up amidst all those common things, trying to understand the world, maturing, dealing with the typical insecurities of her age. She had dreams, plans, and a life ahead of her. Nothing indicated that her name, sometime later, would be in headlines, news reports, and police investigations. To those who saw her from the outside, she was just Madeline, the 13-year-old girl who followed her routine between home and school, without imagining that her story would become a symbol of something much bigger and much sadder. On February 26, 2024, Madeline Soto woke up like any other day. She prepared for another school day, without imagining that that day would mark the end of her routine and the beginning of a nightmare for her family and community. Madeline was supposed to go to school that morning, but she never arrived. Around lunchtime, her mother, Jennifer Soto, noticed that her daughter had not yet returned home. Initially, Jennifer thought that perhaps Madeline was with a friend or had stayed at school for some extra commitment, as was common in her daily routine. However, as time passed and Madeline did not respond to attempts to contact her, the mother began to grow more anxious. When school hours passed and the teenager still had not appeared at home, Jennifer panicked. The search began immediately. Jennifer tried calling her daughter several times, but the calls went straight to voicemail. That's when she contacted Madeline's neighbors and friends, asking if anyone had seen her. No relevant information came up. Madeline wasn't at school. She wasn't at a friend's house, nor anywhere else she usually frequented. A feeling that something was very wrong settled in. Worried and unsure what else to do, Jennifer decided to seek help from the authorities. The police were contacted immediately, and a preliminary investigation was launched. However, the sense of urgency was palpable, and anguish overwhelmed the mother, who felt the pain of the unknown and the absence. No trace of Madeline had been found, neither by security cameras nor by witnesses. In the following hours, more details began to be revealed, but the feeling of uncertainty remained. Friends and family gathered to help in the search, spreading posters with Madeline's photo throughout the city. The situation quickly escalated, and the local media began to closely follow the case. The Kissimmee community was in shock, trying to understand how something like this could happen in a city where a sense of security was routine. Meanwhile, authorities were trying to trace Madeline's movements. Initial investigations attempted to reconstruct the young woman's last steps. It was known that she had never arrived at school that day. The mystery deepened, and a growing doubt spread among everyone. Where was Madeline? What had happened to her? With each passing hour, the anguish and fear increased, and what began as a simple disappearance soon transformed into a much more serious and disturbing enigma. The case was widely reported, and Kissimmee, which until then seemed to be a peaceful town, found itself embroiled in a search that would require much more than just the presence of the police. Something darker was at stake. Madeline's disappearance was not just a case of a lost young woman. It was something deeper, something that would soon come to light, revealing a crime even more horrific than anyone could have imagined. The anguish of the family and the Kissimmee community grew with each passing hour without answers. Police intensified their search efforts, and a dedicated team was formed to try and locate Madeline Soto. Posters with her photo were plastered throughout the city, on social media, and at key community gathering points. Authorities asked the public to provide any information that could aid the investigation, while the search team scoured areas near the school and the surrounding neighborhood where Madeline lived. It was on March 1, 2024, 5 days after Madeline's disappearance, that the case took a darker turn. Madeline's body was found in a wooded area in Osceola County, a place far from her home and school, but still within city limits. The location of her body was identified after a meticulous search by local authorities, who, with the help of search dogs and other resources, finally managed to find the young woman. The news of the discovery of Madeline's body was devastating, not only for her family, but also for the city of Kissimmee, which, until that moment, was still hoping for good news. What should have been the relief of a successful search, the reunion with Madeline, turned into an even deeper nightmare. The community and Madeline's family were shocked and devastated to learn that her disappearance was not a case of running away or an accident, but that she had been the victim of something far more serious. The tragedy took on much greater proportions, and the suffering from the loss of such a vibrant young woman was immeasurable. The police immediately launched a more thorough investigation to understand what had happened. The initial findings regarding the circumstances of Madeline's death were deeply disturbing. During the autopsy, medical examiners confirmed that the cause of death was strangulation. This detail indicated a violent and deliberate death. Furthermore, there were no signs that Madeline had been forced to go to the location where her body was found, suggesting that she had been taken there by force or was somehow in a situation of control before her death. With the discovery of the body, The police now focused not only on finding who had done it, but also on understanding the details of what had happened. The search for clues intensified, as did media attention. As grief over Madeline's loss spread through the community, the pursuit of justice became the top priority for the authorities. During this period, the city of Kissimmee, which until then saw itself as a safe and peaceful place, faced the shock of having its sense of security shattered by such a cruel crime. Madeline's death was now a painful reminder that danger is often closer than we imagine. And at the same time, the case began to raise serious questions about child protection, family abuse, and how these crimes can hide behind a facade of normalcy. Madeline's disappearance and death were not only a personal tragedy, but also a reflection of failures in the child welfare system. And this would become clearer as the investigations progressed, revealing that the perpetrator was someone who, cruelly and unexpectedly, was much closer to Madeline than anyone could have imagined. With Madeline's body already found and the cause of death pointing to a violent crime, the investigation began to focus more strongly on a figure who had always been very close to the family: Stephan Sterns, the boyfriend of the girl's mother. He lived with them, was part of the household routine, and, at first glance, was seen as someone trustworthy within that family environment. However, as investigators began to piece together the timeline of events, Stephan's name went from a simple witness to the main suspect. Right from the start, he told the police that on the morning of February 26, 2024, he had taken Madeline to school and dropped her off at the door. According to him, that was the last time he saw her. However, when officers requested security camera footage from the area and the school itself, no recordings showed Madeline arriving at the school that day. This contradiction was the first concrete point that cast doubt on Stephan's version of events. From then on, everything he said was analyzed much more carefully. Meanwhile, other actions drew attention. Surveillance footage from nearby establishments showed Stephan discarding items in trash cans at times very close to Madeline's disappearance. Later, the police managed to locate some of these items, among them belongings of the teenager, such as school supplies. The fact that someone so close to the victim was disposing of things that belonged to her exactly at that time was considered extremely suspicious and reinforced the need for a more thorough investigation into his behavior. With a court order, Stephan's cell phone and digital accounts began to be examined in detail. It was at this moment that the investigation took a definitive turn. Experts found files of an intimate and completely inappropriate nature involving Madeline. The dates of these records indicated that this situation had been happening for years, since she was much younger. This material, in addition to constituting serious crimes in itself, showed that the relationship between Stephan and Madeline was not merely one of family coexistence, but involved a history of exploitation and violence hidden within their own home. These findings were treated with extreme seriousness by the authorities and became central pieces of the investigation. They helped establish that Stephan was not just someone who lied about Madeline's whereabouts on the day of her disappearance, but someone who had long exerted control and power over her. Adding to the lie about the school, the discarded belongings, and the contents found on her devices, the picture that emerged was of a suspect directly linked to both the disappearance and the events leading up to the teenager's death. From that point on, there was no longer any doubt for the investigators. Stephan Sterns was the main person responsible to be brought to justice for what happened to Madeline Soto. Following the discovery of Madeline Soto's body on March 1st, 2024, the investigation quickly progressed to determine the cause of her death. An autopsy was performed to better understand the circumstances and provide crucial information to the authorities. The analysis revealed that Madeline was a victim of strangulation. The cause of death was a form of homicide that indicated a violent and deliberate death. The cause of death was a determining factor in the investigations, helping to clarify that the teenager's disappearance was linked to an intentional and cruel crime. The investigation process was meticulous, with experts examining every aspect of the crime scene and conducting a series of tests to confirm the details of the homicide. Although the method of murder was established, the focus of the investigation was on understanding the circumstances that led to this point which directly implied the need to gather more evidence about Madeline's relationship with Stephan Sterns, the main suspect in the crime. The impact of the case on the community was profound and immediate. Kissimmee, a normally tranquil city, was shaken by such a shocking tragedy so close to home. The loss of a young woman with so much potential generated a wave of sadness and outrage among local residents, who were still reeling from the shock of the disappearance and now faced the harsh reality of the brutal crime. The case also had broader repercussions, with authorities and community members discussing the need to strengthen child protection measures and vigilance regarding domestic abuse. Furthermore, the way the investigation was conducted and the care with which the authorities handled the case helped ensure that the pursuit of justice for Madeline was carried out rigorously. The case became a point of reflection on how to ensure that tragedies like this do not happen again, and on the importance of acting promptly when signs of abuse and violence are perceived. The case of Madeline Soto went to court in 2025, following a thorough investigation that gathered sufficient evidence to incriminate Stephan Sterns for Madeline's murder and prolonged abuse. The trial, which attracted local and national attention, was a landmark in the pursuit of justice for the young girl, bringing to light not only the details of the crime, but also the failures in child protection systems that allowed the abuse to be kept secret for so long. Stephan Sterns was charged with first-degree murder, as well as multiple counts of child sexual abuse. During the trial, the defense attempted to downplay the seriousness of Sterns' actions, but the evidence presented by the prosecution was irrefutable. The images and videos found on his cell phone, expert testimony, and physical evidence of strangulation were decisive in establishing his guilt. Faced with the strength of the evidence, Stephan decided to plead no contest to the charges, meaning he did not formally contest the accusation, but also did not explicitly admit guilt. This no contest agreement resulted in a sentence of 21 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. This sentence was imposed by the court as a way to ensure that Stephan Sterns served a long prison term for the gravity of his crimes, especially the continued abuse of Madeline and the brutal murder that resulted in her death. The court's decision was an attempt to ensure that he was held accountable for all the atrocities committed over the years, and to ensure that he never again had the opportunity to harm another person. The sentencing was a moment of relief for many, especially for Madeline's mother, Jennifer Soto. While no sentence can repair the pain of losing a daughter, Jennifer expressed her gratitude for the justice that was served, hoping it would honor Madeline's memory. She spoke publicly about the suffering of losing her daughter so tragically, but also about the importance of ensuring that those responsible for such crimes are punished justly. Sterns' conviction was seen as a victory for Madeline's memory and an important step towards the community beginning to heal. The Kissimmee community also reacted with mixed emotions. Many felt relieved to see that the person responsible for such a horrific crime had been brought to justice, but at the same time, the impact of losing a young woman with so much potential continued to weigh heavily on everyone. Madeline was remembered as a girl full of dreams who, unfortunately, had her life cut short by an act of violence committed by someone she trusted. Despite the pain and suffering, the case also raised an important reflection on the need for greater vigilance and support regarding child protection. The trial and conviction of Stephan Sterns helped highlight the importance of combating abuse and ensuring that children and adolescents have a safe environment to grow up in. Justice for Madeline Soto, although belated, sent a clear message that crimes like the one she suffered would not be tolerated, and that her memory would serve as a reminder to all that the fight for the protection of children must be continuous. The 21 life sentence was a legal closure to the case, but for the family and the community, the scar left by Madeline's death would endure. The fight for justice was a crucial step, but the pain of losing a young life, a life cut short so soon, would continue to be a painful reminder for all involved. The case of Madeline Soto, although it reached a judicial conclusion with the conviction of Stephan Sterns, leaves an indelible mark on the memory of all who followed her story. The pain of a life cut short in such a brutal way is something that can never be fully overcome. Madeline, a young woman with so much potential and dreams ahead of her, was the victim of a crime that makes us deeply question the trust we place in those around us, especially within the homes that should be the safest. Her death exposed a grim reality of prolonged abuse, made possible by the silence and invisibility of her suffering. This reminds us that, often, victims of abuse lack the ability to ask for help, or worse, are forced to maintain a painful silence out of fear, or because they don't know who to turn to. Madeline's story also raises urgent questions about how communities, schools, and families can improve vigilance and support so that other young people don't have to suffer in the shadows of what should be a safe environment. The trial of Stephan Sterns and his sentencing to 21 life sentences was a moment of justice, but it did not erase the pain left for his mother, Jennifer Soto, and for all who loved her. Legal justice was served, but the loss of a daughter, sister, and friend is something that can never be repaired. This tragedy also highlighted the importance of creating more effective support networks, raising awareness about child abuse, and ensuring that children's voices are heard before suffering becomes unbearable. As we reflect on Madeline's story, it is crucial that her memory serves as a warning to us all. May we actively engage in protecting younger generations, recognizing the signs of abuse, and never allowing a child's silent fear to become their only reality. May Madeline's case remind us of the importance of vigilance, empathy, and care, so that tragedies like this are never repeated. Madeline Soto will not be forgotten, and her story, though marked by pain, also calls us to a continued commitment to justice, safety, and the protection of children everywhere. May we honor her memory, not only with remembrances of her loss, but with concrete actions to ensure that no other child suffers what she suffered.